My hands trembled as I held the acceptance letters from 3 prestigious universities. Each envelope represented a different version of my future, all of them better than the suffocating present I was living in. I'm Autumn, and this should have been the happiest day of my life. Mom! Dad! I rushed down the stairs, nearly tripping over my own feet. I got in! All 3 of them accepted me! The living room fell silent. Mom's perfectly manicured fingers tightened around her coffee cup. Dad lowered his newspaper, that familiar crease between his eyebrows deepening. My sister Madeline, home from her banking internship, didn't even look up from her phone. "Sweetheart," Mom started, exchanging a look with Dad. "We need to discuss something." I knew that tone. It was the same one she used when telling me I couldn't go to summer camp because Madeline's tennis lessons were more important, or when my art supplies had to wait because Madeline needed a new laptop. "We've been meaning to talk to you about college," Dad said, folding his newspaper with deliberate precision. "With Madeline's final year at business school and her upcoming position at Sterling Bank, our finances are stretched thin." The acceptance letters suddenly felt heavy, like stones in my hands. "But," I thought, "you know how important Madeline's career is for our family's future," Mom cut in. "The connection she's making, the opportunities ahead of her." Madeline finally looked up, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Don't worry, little sister. There are plenty of jobs that don't require a degree." My throat burned. "I've been working part-time for 2 years saving up. I can apply for scholarships, take out loans." "Absolutely not." Dad's voice hardened. "We can't risk any loans affecting our credit. Madeline needs a clean financial slate for her career advancement." I stared at them, these familiar strangers who called themselves my family. 22 years of second place, of maybe next times, and Madeline needs it mores crashed over me like a tidal wave. "So that's it?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Madeline gets everything and I get nothing, again." "Don't be dramatic," Mom sighed. "We're thinking about what's best for everyone." "Everyone?" I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to make Madeline flinch. "You mean what's best for her?" "That's enough." Dad stood up. "This discussion is over. You'll find something local, something practical. The hotel you're working at seems to like you well enough." I looked down at the acceptance letters, at the dreams they represented. Then I watched as they slipped from my fingers, scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. "You're right, Dad," I said quietly. "This discussion is over." I turned and walked away, ignoring Mom's calls behind me. In my room, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The Luxor Hotel's employee portal glowed on the screen. I'd been working there part-time while finishing high school, learning every aspect of the hospitality business I could. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Sophie. "How did it go? Did you tell them?" I typed back. "They chose her, again." Sophie's response was immediate. "I'm coming over, don't do anything crazy." But as I sat there, something shifted inside me. Years of swallowed hurt crystallized into something harder, colder. They thought the hotel was good enough for me? Fine. I'd show them exactly what I could do without their precious support or connections. I opened a new tab and searched for Ethan Collins, CEO, Pinnacle Hotels. His face smiled back at me from the screen, confident and successful. I'd heard rumors he was looking to mentor promising young talent in the industry. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destruction. It's about rising so high that those who dismissed you have to crane their necks just to see how far they've fallen behind. I saved his contact information just as Sophie's car pulled into the driveway. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. The party buzzed with fake laughter and designer perfume. I stood in the corner of our living room, watching Madeline work the crowd at her graduation celebration. Every few minutes, someone would mention her new position at Sterling Bank, and Mom would beam like she'd personally arranged the sunrise. "Another drink?" Sophie appeared at my side, offering a glass of champagne. "Thanks, but I need to stay sharp. Early shift tomorrow." I smoothed down my Luxor hotel uniform, the polyester a stark contrast to the silk and cashmere surrounding me. "You could call in sick," Sophie suggested. "One day won't—" "Autumn!" Mom's voice cut through the chatter. "Come help serve the hors d'oeuvres. You have experience with this sort of thing now, don't you?" The room rippled with polite titters. I caught Madeline's smirk before she turned back to her adoring audience. "Of course, Mother," I replied, my voice honey-sweet. "Just like at work, where I've been promoted to junior events coordinator." Mom's smile flickered. She hadn't known about the promotion. I hadn't bothered telling them. That's nice, dear. Now the salmon puffs need refreshing. I moved through the crowd, tray in hand, collecting fragments of conversation like broken glass. Both daughters in business, someone remarked to Dad. How wonderful. He coughed. Well, Madeline's in finance. Autumn is just finding her way. Just finding my way. 6 months of 60-hour weeks, learning every aspect of hotel operations, earning that promotion through pure grit, all reduced to finding my way. Did you hear? Madeline's voice carried across the room. Sterling's fast-tracking me for management. Daddy's golf partner put in a good word. The salmon puffs trembled on my tray. Of course. Everything handed to her, wrapped in a bow. Autumn? Sophie touched my arm. You're grinding your teeth again. Before I could respond, Jessica Reynolds, my new colleague at Luxor, swept into the room. I hadn't invited her. Hadn't even mentioned the party. Madeline! Jessica air-kissed my sister. Congratulations! I just had to stop by when I heard about the celebration. My sister preened. Jessica, darling! I didn't know you and my sister were friends. Oh, we worked together at that charming little hotel. Jessica's laugh tinkled like breaking ice. Although I hear there might be an opening at Sterling's corporate events department. The pieces clicked. Jessica hadn't come for me. She'd come for Madeline. For connections. For opportunities I'd never be offered. I set down the tray and walked to the kitchen, my hands shaking. Through the serving window, I watched Jessica and Madeline huddle together, whispering and giggling, planning, plotting. They make quite a pair, don't they? Mom appeared beside me, refilling her wine. You know, Jessica's family has excellent connections. Perhaps she could help you find something more suitable than hotel work. I turned to face her. You mean something that wouldn't embarrass you at parties? Don't be difficult, Autumn. We want what's best for you. No, I said quietly. You want what's best for Madeline. I'm just the backup plan, the safety net, the one who serves appetizers while she serves herself my future. Mom's face hardened. That's enough. This is your sister's day. Don't ruin it with your jealousy. I watched her rejoin the party, where Dad was now regaling guests with stories of Madeline's academic achievements. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus Hayes, my manager at Luxor. Meeting tomorrow with Ethan Collins. He asked specifically about you. Don't be late. I looked up through the serving window again. Jessica was showing Madeline something on her phone, both of them laughing. Mom and Dad orbited their golden child like adoring satellites. The perfect family portrait, complete with the servant in the kitchen. My fingers tightened around the phone. Ethan Collins, CEO of Pinnacle Hotels, known for mentoring rising stars in the industry. He'd noticed me, asked for me. I typed back, I'll be there. Sophie appeared in the kitchen doorway. Want to escape? No, I said, straightening my uniform. I want to serve them all dessert, and then I want to go home and prepare for tomorrow's meeting. Autumn? Don't worry, I smiled, and it felt like baring teeth. I'm just finding my way. I picked up the dessert tray, my reflection distorted in its silver surface. Tomorrow, Ethan Collins would meet someone hungry for success, someone willing to do whatever it took to rise above the family that buried her. Let them laugh, let them plot, let them think they know what I'm capable of. They'll learn. The Sterling Bank Charity Gala sparkled with wealth and pretense. I adjusted my name tag. Autumn Turner, Events Coordinator, Luxor Hotel. And watched Madeline work the room. 3 months into her new position, and already she was hosting major events. Your sister's quite the rising star, Marcus said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of water. Youngest associate to handle the charity portfolio, I heard. Fascinating. I accepted the water, noting how the bank's CEO kept patting Madeline's shoulder. Almost like magic. Marcus lowered his voice. Speaking of magic, how was your meeting with Ethan Collins? Before I could answer, I spotted Gerald Watson, my father's oldest friend and golf partner, heading for the bar. The same man who'd supposedly recommended Madeline for her fast-track position. Hold that thought, I murmured, moving through the crowd. Gerald was alone in the bar, studying the Scotch selection. Perfect. Mr. Watson, I smiled, sliding onto the stool next to him. How's retirement treating you? He turned, squinting slightly. Autumn? Good Lord, you're all grown up. Still at that hotel? Moving up quickly, I said. Just like Madeline. Though she had some help, didn't she? His expression flickered. I'm not sure what you mean. Not sure. Your recommendation? I kept my voice light. Dad mentioned how instrumental you were in getting her noticed. Gerald shifted uncomfortably. Well, that is... He took a long sip of scotch. Actually, I never made any recommendation. Robert asked me to take credit, said it would look better than admitting he'd called in favors from his old fraternity brothers. The room tilted slightly. Fraternity brothers? Oh yes, quite a network. Your mother's family connections too. Very influential in banking circles. He chuckled. Though I suppose you know all this, being family. I didn't. I knew nothing. If you'll excuse me, I managed, standing up. The room felt too bright, too loud. I found Sophie by the dessert table. I need air. She followed me onto the terrace, where the night air did nothing to cool the burning in my chest. What happened? They lied. My hands gripped the railing. All of them. Dad never asked Gerald Watson for help. He used his whole network. Mom, too. They've been paving Madeline's way since before graduation. Autumn. Everything she has, everything she's achieved, it's all engineered. While I've been working 60-hour weeks, learning every aspect of hotel operations, earning every single step up. Miss Turner? A server appeared at the door. Mr. Collins is on the phone for you. Says it's urgent? I straightened, smoothing my dress. Tell him I'll call back in 5 minutes. Sophie touched my arm. What are you going to do? Through the window, I could see my family gathered around Madeline as she addressed the crowd. Mom beaming, Dad proud, their perfect daughter bathed in spotlight they'd secretly arranged. I'm going to take Ethan's offer, I said. He wants to mentor me? Fine. I'll learn everything he knows about the hotel industry. Every connection, every strategy, every secret. And then I'll build something of my own. Something real. Something they can't ignore or dismiss. I turned away from the window. And when I'm done, everyone will know exactly how their precious Madeline really got where she is. You're starting to scare me, Sophie whispered. I smiled, and it felt like breaking glass. Good, because I'm starting to scare myself. Inside, Madeline was announcing a new initiative, her initiative, supposedly, to revolutionize corporate banking relationships. The crowd applauded, and I watched Gerald Watson shift uncomfortably at the bar. My phone buzzed. Another message from Ethan Collins. Decision time, Autumn. Are you ready to play in the big leagues? I looked at my family one last time. The carefully constructed image of success they'd built on a foundation of lies and favoritism. Then I typed my response. Yes. When do we start? Sophie read the message over my shoulder. There's no going back from this, you know. Going back to what? I slipped my phone into my clutch. To being the family disappointment? The one they couldn't be bothered to support? The one serving drinks at her sister's parties? To being the better person. I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to make heads turn. Maybe I'm tired of being the better person. Maybe it's time to be the smarter one instead. The server reappeared. Miss Turner, Mr. Collins is still holding. I straightened my spine, felt the weight of years of second-place finishes fall away. Tell him I'm on my way to his office now. And Sophie? Yeah? Don't wait up. Don't wait. I walked through the gala, past my oblivious family, past Gerald Watson and his guilty conscience, past all the carefully maintained lies. It was time to learn how the game was really played. And then, change all the rules. Ethan Collins' office felt like a cage of glass and steel. He sat across from me, studying the proposal I'd spent weeks perfecting, a complete overhaul of Pinnacle Hotel's event management system. Impressive, he said finally, especially coming from someone without formal business education. The words stung, but I kept my face neutral. Results speak louder than degrees. Indeed. He tapped the proposal. Which is why I'm putting you in charge of implementing this across all our properties. My heart jumped. This was it. The breakthrough I'd been working toward. Then he added, starting with the Sterling Bank corporate retreat next month. The air left the room. Sterling Bank? Problem? His smile didn't reach his eyes. I thought you'd be pleased. Your sister's department is handling their end. Perfect opportunity for family collaboration. Of course, nothing in my life could ever be simple. I appreciate the opportunity, I said carefully. But perhaps another client. This isn't a request, Autumn. Ethan's voice hardened. Unless you're not ready for real responsibility. The threat was clear. I'd seen others refuse his opportunities. They didn't last long at Pinnacle. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. 911, call me about Madeline. I'll make it work, I told Ethan, standing. Is there anything else? Outside, I found a quiet corner and called Sophie. You're not going to believe this, she said. Jessica Reynolds just got promoted at Luxor. Guess who recommended her? Madeline? Better, your parents. They're on the bank's hospitality advisory board now. They're systematically placing their people in hotels across the city. My fingers tightened around the phone. Why? Control, power. Take your pick. But here's the kicker. Marcus overheard Jessica talking about some big plan for the Sterling retreat. Something about proving traditional hotels can't handle modern corporate needs. The pieces clicked. Madeline's department, my parents' sudden interest in hotels, Ethan's insistence on this particular project. They're setting me up to fail, I whispered. What are you going to do? I watched Ethan through his office window, already on another call, probably plotting someone else's career. Down the hall, Jessica Reynolds walked past, smirking at me. Meet me tonight, I said. Bring Marcus. I need to know everything about Jessica's involvement. Autumn, Sophie hesitated. Maybe it's time to walk away. Find another industry. Start fresh somewhere they can't reach you. I thought of all the times I'd stepped aside, made way, stayed quiet. No, they want to play games? Fine. But they're about to learn I'm not the same naive girl they can push around. What's your plan? Through the window, I could see Ethan ending his call, gesturing for me to return. First, I accept their challenge. Make them think their trap is working. Then I show them what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. I ended the call and walked back into Ethan's office, where he waited with contracts ready to sign. Everything all right? He asked, that same calculating smile in place. Perfect, I replied, signing my name with steady hands. Just confirming dinner with my sister. We have so much to catch up on. Later, in my apartment, I spread out everything I had. Project plans, staff records, financial reports. Sophie and Marcus sat across from me, their faces grim as they shared what they knew about Jessica's schemes. You realize, Marcus said quietly, if you fight this, you're not just taking on Jessica or your sister, you're challenging your whole family's power structure. I picked up a photo from my desk, the last family picture we'd taken, before I learned the truth about their manipulations, before I understood that love in my family came with conditions and rankings. They thought giving me this project was their move, I said, dropping the photo into the trash. They didn't realize it's exactly what I needed, access to their whole network. One event to expose everything they've built on lies and favoritism. And Ethan? Sophie asked. He's not going to just stand by and watch. I smiled, thinking of the backup files I'd already secured, the conversations I'd recorded. No, he's going to do exactly what people like him always do. Try to control everything. And that's going to be his biggest mistake. The city lights flickered outside my window, and somewhere across town, my family was probably congratulating themselves on their clever plan. Let them celebrate. They'd learn soon enough that they'd handed matches to the wrong person to play with. The Sterling Bank retreat was 3 days away when Daniel Brooks walked into my office at Pinnacle Hotels. Tall, confident, with a smile that suggested he knew things others didn't. Impressive setup you have here, he said, studying the event plans spread across my desk. Though I expected Madeline's sister to be more like her. My pen stilled. You know Madeline. We've been seeing each other. He settled into the chair across from me. She mentioned you might need help with the retreat. Something about your limited experience with high-end corporate events? Of course she had. I forced a smile. That's thoughtful of her. but I have everything under control. Do you? He slid a folder across my desk. Because these security reports suggest otherwise. Inside were detailed assessments of every vulnerability in my event plan. Staffing gaps, technical weaknesses, potential points of failure. Things only someone with inside access would know. Where did you get these? Let's just say I have interest in both banking and hospitality. His smile never wavered. I could help you fix these issues. For a price. Before I could respond, Ethan appeared in my doorway. Daniel, I see you've met our rising star. The two men exchanged a look that made my skin crawl. Just offering some friendly advice, Daniel said, standing. Think about it, Autumn. You wouldn't want anything to go wrong at such a crucial event. After he left, Ethan lingered. Daniel's well-connected. It would be wise to consider his offer. Like you considered his help with other projects? Ethan's expression hardened. Careful, Autumn. You're playing in deeper waters now. That evening, I met Sophie at our usual bar. They're working together, I said, showing her photos I'd taken of the security reports. Ethan, Daniel, Madeline, it's all connected. There's more. Sophie pushed her phone across the table. On it was an article about Sterling Bank's new venture capital division, headed by Daniel Brooks. Guess who's on the advisory board? My parents? And Ethan Collins. The pieces clicked together like a poisonous puzzle. They weren't just trying to sabotage my event. They were positioning themselves to take control of Pinnacle Hotels through Sterling Bank's investment arm. My phone buzzed. A text from Madeline. Dinner tomorrow? We should talk about the retreat. Don't go, Sophie warned. It's obviously a trap. No, I said, typing my response. It's an opportunity. The next night, I sat across from Madeline at her favorite restaurant, watching her perform her concerned sister act. We're worried about you, Autumn, she said, reaching for my hand. All this pressure, no formal training. It's not fair to you. I pulled away. Like it wasn't fair when Mom and Dad funded your degree but not mine? That was different. They knew I'd make good use of it. She sighed. Look, Daniel can help smooth things over. Make sure you come out of this looking competent. In exchange for what? Just some minor adjustments to the event plan. Nothing serious. She smiled Mom's smile. We're family after all. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. Yes, we are. And that's exactly why this is going to hurt so much more than you expect. What are you talking about? You'll see. I dropped my napkin on the table. Give my best to Daniel, and Ethan, and everyone else involved in your little scheme. Her face paled. Autumn, don't be stupid. You can't fight this. Watch me. Back at my office, I found Marcus waiting with a stack of documents. You were right, he said. I found the connection. Daniel's company has been buying up shares in Pinnacle through shell corporations. They're planning a hostile takeover. I looked out at the city lights, at the Sterling Bank Tower gleaming in the distance. How long until they have controlling interest? 2 weeks, maybe less. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd been saving. Time to call in that favor, I said when the line connected. I need everything you have on Daniel Brooks and his connection to Sterling Bank's investment practices. And the retreat? Marcus asked after I hung up. I smiled, thinking of all the evidence I'd been gathering, all the pieces finally falling into place. Oh, the retreat is definitely happening, just not quite the way they planned. They'll destroy you if this goes wrong. Maybe. I picked up Daniel's security report, now marked with my own notes and plans. But I'm done being the sister who steps aside, the daughter who stays quiet, the employee who plays by their rules. What are you going to do? I looked at my reflection in the window, barely recognizing the person I'd become. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, and then I'm going to take everything they have. The Sterling Bank retreat imploded spectacularly. I stood in Ethan's office, watching the security footage play out on his laptop. Servers collapsing, tech failures, VIP guests trapped in elevators. Everything I'd planned, everything I'd worked for destroyed in 6 hours of calculated chaos. Quite a show, Ethan said, closing the laptop. Though not quite the performance we expected from you. I can explain. Can you? He slid a folder across his desk. Explain these, perhaps? Inside were photos. Me meeting with Marcus late at night, conversations with Sophie, Screenshots of encrypted emails. My entire plan laid bare. You really thought we wouldn't be watching? Ethan's smile was razor sharp. That we wouldn't notice you gathering evidence, planning your little revenge? The door opened. Daniel walked in, followed by Madeline. My sister's face held none of its usual smugness, only cold determination. The board's waiting, Daniel said to Ethan. They want to hear her explanation directly. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. They're seizing the files. All of them. I'm sorry. Before we go up, Madeline stepped forward. I thought you should know. Mom and Dad just removed you from the family trust, officially. The words hit like physical blows. Everything I'd built, every piece of leverage I'd gathered, crumbling in minutes. You did this to yourself, Madeline continued. If you just accepted your place. My place, I laughed, and the sound was hollow. You mean under your shadow? Serving drinks at your parties? Better than unemployment. Ethan stood. The board's decision is already made. We're just giving you the courtesy of defending yourself. Though I wouldn't bother, Daniel added. The evidence is quite comprehensive. They led me to the boardroom like a prisoner to execution. Familiar faces lined the table. Business leaders, bank executives, my parents' carefully cultivated network. Mom and Dad sat near the head, not meeting my eyes. Miss Turner, the board chairman began. We've reviewed the evidence of your attempted corporate espionage and sabotage. I stopped listening. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the city stretching out. All those glittering towers built on connections and favors, on families protecting their own. My phone buzzed again. Sophie this time. They got to Marcus. He's recanting everything. Effective immediately, the chairman was saying. Furthermore, given the severity of these actions, Madeline touched my arm, her voice soft with fake concern. Just admit it, Autumn. Make this easier on yourself. I looked at my sister, at Ethan and Daniel flanking her like guards, at my parents still avoiding my gaze, all of them so certain of their victory, of their right to decide my fate. Miss Turner? The chairman's voice hardened. Do you have anything to say in your defense? I stood, my chair scraping against marble floors. Just one thing. Choose your words carefully, Ethan warned. I pulled out my phone, opened an email, and pressed send. You should check your phones, all of you, right now. The room filled with buzzing and chimes. I watched their faces as they read, confusion turning to shock, then fear. What is this? Daniel's voice cracked. Insurance, I said. Every conversation, every deal, every favor called in. I may be going down, but I'm not going alone. You're bluffing, Madeline whispered. Am I? Ask Ethan about the offshore accounts. Ask Daniel about the shell companies. Ask our parents about the donations that bought your career. The room erupted in chaos. My father finally looked at me, his face ashen. What have you done? Exactly what you taught me, I replied. Family first, right? I walked out, leaving them scrambling to contain the damage. In the elevator, my hands finally started shaking. I'd lost everything. My job, my family, my reputation. But I'd made them bleed. Outside, Sophie waited in her car. That bad? Worse. I slid into the passenger seat. But it's not over. Autumn, she hesitated. Maybe it should be. You could start fresh somewhere else, away from all this. I watched Madeline and Daniel burst out of the building, phones pressed to their ears, faces panicked. No, this isn't the end. Then what is it? I thought of all the evidence I still held back, all the secrets I hadn't yet revealed. It's just the beginning of their fall. Sophie started the car and we pulled away from the curb. Behind us, my old life crumbled. Ahead, something darker waited. Let them think they'd won. Let them celebrate their victory. They'd learn soon enough. Sometimes you have to lose everything to become truly dangerous. 3 months after my fall from Pinnacle Hotels, I watched Madeline's engagement party from across the street. The city's elite filtered into the grand ballroom of the Sterling Bank Tower, celebrating her upcoming marriage to Daniel Brooks, the perfect power couple according to the society pages. My phone buzzed with an alert. Sterling Bank stocks plummet amid fraud investigation, right on schedule. Right. Inside, the party was in full swing. I adjusted my catering uniform, nodding to Sophie at the bar. She'd infiltrated the event planning team weeks ago, ensuring everything was in place. Autumn? Marcus's voice crackled through my earpiece. SEC agents are in position, waiting for your signal. I moved through the crowd, invisible in my server's outfit. Madeline stood at the center of it all, glowing in designer white, Daniel's arm around her waist. Our parents beamed nearby, while Ethan Collins worked the room like the puppet master he thought he was. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel clinked his glass. I'd like to propose a toast. Actually, I stepped forward, removing my serving apron. I have something to say first. The room froze. Madeline's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on marble floors. Security! Ethan barked, but Sophie was already blocking the doors with hotel staff. My people, not his. What are you doing here? Madeline hissed. I smiled, pulling out my phone. Finishing what you all started. Check the markets, Daniel. Your little empire's crumbling as we speak. He grabbed his phone, face draining of color. This is impossible. The offshore accounts were traced, I finished. Amazing what people will reveal when they think they've destroyed you, when they get sloppy with their secrets. Enough, Mom stepped forward. You're making a scene. Like you made a scene disinheriting me? Or when you orchestrated my removal from Pinnacle? I turned to the increasingly uncomfortable crowd. Did you know your hosts built their success on fraud? That every deal, every promotion, every achievement was bought and paid for? Security! Ethan shouted again. They won't come, I said. They're too busy letting federal agents into your offices. All of your offices. Madeline lunged for me, but Daniel held her back, his eyes fixed on his phone as notifications flooded in. You've ruined everything, she spat. No, sister dear. I learned from the best. From you, from them. I gestured to our parents, to Ethan. Family first, remember? Protect your own? Well, I'm done being the one you sacrifice. Miss Turner? A voice cut through the chaos. A federal agent stepped forward, flanked by others. We need these individuals to come with us. I watched them lead away my family, Ethan, Daniel, all the architects of my destruction. Madeline stopped beside me, tears streaking her perfect makeup. How? She whispered. How did you do this? I had help. Marcus never really betrayed me. We planned it together. Every piece of evidence he gave you was carefully selected. While you celebrated my downfall, I gathered the real proof. And Sophie? I nodded to my friend. She's been documenting everything since that first charity gala. I'll fight this, she warned. We all will. With what? I showed her my phone. Transfers, emails, recorded conversations. Your entire network is compromised. Every favor called in, every deal made, even Mom and Dad's precious reputation. An agent took her arm. Miss Turner, please. You know the funny thing? I called after her. I never wanted any of this. All I wanted was a chance. Equal treatment. A family that saw me. She looked back, and for a moment, I saw something like understanding cross her face. Then the elevator doors closed, taking her away. Sophie appeared at my side as the crowd dispersed, whispers and shocked conversations filling the air. Was it worth it? I watched through the windows as police lights flashed below, as reporters gathered like vultures. Tomorrow, every newspaper would carry the story. The spectacular fall of Sterling Bank's golden family, of Pinnacle Hotel's corrupt CEO, of the perfect daughter's fraudulent rise. Ask me tomorrow, I said, turning away from the window. Right now, we have a hotel to run. I smiled, thinking of the investors who'd backed me after seeing the evidence, of the empire I'd built from the ashes of their betrayal. Karma's a funny thing, isn't it? They tried to bury me, not realizing I was a seed. Outside, the city lights sparkled like broken glass, beautiful and dangerous, just like revenge. The grand opening of Turner Plaza Hotel gleamed with promise. My name, just mine, shone in elegant letters above the entrance. Inside, the city's elite mingled, pretending they hadn't watched my family's empire crumble in the newspapers. Quite a turnout, Sophie said, adjusting my jacket, though I noticed some notable absences. I smiled, thinking of Madeline and her ankle monitor, of our parents hiding in their downsized home, of Ethan facing federal charges. They'll read about it tomorrow. Marcus appeared with a tablet. Final numbers are in. We're fully booked through next quarter. And the Sterling Bank building? Sold at auction this morning, to us. He grinned. Perfect spot for our next expansion. The irony wasn't lost on me. The tower that had once symbolized my family's rejection would soon bear my name instead. Miss Turner? A familiar voice made me turn. Gerald Watson stood there, looking older than I remembered. I wanted to congratulate you, and apologize, for my part in all of it. No need, I said. You helped expose the truth in the end, even if you didn't mean to. He nodded, understanding the dismissal. As he walked away, I caught sight of Jessica Reynolds serving drinks. She'd begged for any position after Sterling's collapse. Sometimes karma worked perfectly. There's someone else here to see you, Sophie murmured. In your office. I found Madeline waiting, her designer clothes replaced by something simpler. Her usual confidence dimmed. Nice security, she said. They almost didn't let me in. Why are you here? She placed an envelope on my desk. Mom and Dad's lawyers found this in their files. Your college acceptance letters. They kept them. Of course they did. I didn't touch the envelope. Trophies of their control. No, Madeline's voice cracked. They were guilty. Every time they helped me, funded me, pushed me forward, they kept these as reminders of what they'd done to you. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you understand. She met my eyes. They knew you were the stronger one, the smarter one. They pushed me forward because they knew you'd succeed anyway. I laughed, but the sound held no humor. And that justifies everything? No. Nothing justifies what we did. She turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, you've proved them right. You did succeed. Without help, without connections, without anything but your own strength. Goodbye, Madeline. After she left, I picked up the envelope, feeling the weight of those old dreams. Then I dropped it in the shredder without opening it. Sophie found me later on the rooftop terrace overlooking the city. You okay? I should feel triumphant, I said. I won. I took everything they had, built something bigger from the ruins. But I keep thinking about those acceptance letters, about who I might have been without all this pain and betrayal. You can still be that person, Sophie suggested. The revenge is done. The hotel's successful. Maybe it's time to... To what? Forgive them? To forgive yourself. She handed me a glass of champagne. For becoming someone who could hurt them as deeply as they hurt you. Below, guests departed in expensive cars, already spreading word of the new power player in town. My phone buzzed with messages from investors, developers, people who'd once dismissed me now begging for meetings. The funny thing is, I said, I thought revenge would feel like winning, like finally being seen, but standing here at the top of everything I built. What does it feel like? I thought of Madeline's words, of those shredded acceptance letters, of all the paths not taken. It feels like learning to see myself. The city lights flickered, stars trying to shine through smog and neon. Somewhere out there, my family was living with the consequences of their choices, just as I was living with mine. To new beginnings, Sophie raised her glass. I clinked mine against hers, but didn't drink. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new choices between mercy and vengeance. The game wasn't over. It had just changed. And this time, I was writing all the rules.
These videos will prove everything, my mother-in-law Margaret announced triumphantly, waving a USB drive in the air like a victory flag. I've been gathering evidence for months. She's not the perfect wife everyone thinks she is. I sat quietly in the courtroom, my hands folded in my lap, watching the scene unfold. At 32, I never imagined I'd be here, listening to the woman who once welcomed me into her family trying to destroy my marriage with secretly recorded footage of my daily life. Your Honor, Margaret's voice dripped with satisfaction. These recordings show how she treats my son, how she's ruining his life. 3 months of footage doesn't lie. My name is Olivia Parker, and for the past 8 years, I've been married to James, Margaret's only son. The first few years were wonderful. James and I built a life together, both working in healthcare, me as a pediatric nurse and him as a hospital administrator. But everything changed when Margaret's husband passed away 2 years ago. She moved in with us temporarily, claiming she couldn't bear to be alone. That's when the surveillance began, though I didn't know it at the time. Mrs. Parker, the judge addressed Margaret, his expression neutral. You're saying you installed cameras in your son's house without the knowledge or consent of either resident? It's my house too, Margaret protested. I live there. I had every right to protect my son from her manipulation. I felt James shift uncomfortably beside me. He hadn't spoken to me since Margaret revealed the existence of these recordings last week. His silence hurt more than her accusations. As our lawyer, Sarah Bennett, stood up, I remember the day everything came to light. I'd been working a double shift at the children's ward, covering for a colleague whose daughter was sick. When I got home, exhausted after 16 hours of caring for sick children, Margaret was holding a family meeting in our living room. James's siblings were there, along with their spouses, all wearing expressions of concern and disappointment. Margaret stood in the center, her laptop open, ready to showcase her evidence. Watch this, she had said, playing a clip of me coming home late one night. See how she sneaks in. Who knows where she's been? I tried to explain about my hospital shifts, but Margaret talked over me. And look at this one, she's always on her phone, ignoring my poor James, probably talking to other men. The other men were my patients' parents checking on their children's conditions, but Margaret didn't care about explanations. Now, in the courtroom, Sarah approached the bench. Your Honor, before we proceed with viewing these illegally obtained recordings, I'd like to submit Mrs. Olivia Parker's work schedules and patient care logs for the past 3 months. Margaret scoffed. Those can be faked. The videos don't lie. The judge nodded to the court technician. Let's view the footage. My stomach tightened as the first video played on the courtroom screen. It showed me in our kitchen at 5 a.m., quietly preparing breakfast and lunch for James before heading to my shift. Margaret had conveniently edited out the part where I left a loving note for him every morning. See, Margaret interrupted. She's leaving before he wakes up. What kind of wife does that? The judge held up his hand. Mrs. Parker, please refrain from commentary. Let's continue. More clips played, me coming home late, taking phone calls in the garden, having whispered conversations in our home office. Each moment taken out of context, each action twisted to fit Margaret's narrative. Then something unexpected happened. In one of the clips, the camera caught Margaret herself, entering my home office late at night. She was going through my desk drawers, searching for something. The courtroom fell silent. Margaret's face paled. Your Honor, Sarah spoke up, it seems these recordings capture more than just my client's activities. The next clip showed Margaret in our bedroom, rummaging through my personal belongings. Then another of her reading my private journal on the back porch. And another of her going through my phone while I was in the shower. I was just protecting my son, Margaret stammered. She's not who she pretends to be. James finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Mom, what were you doing in our bedroom? More footage played, showing Margaret having hushed phone conversations of her own. Yes, I'm telling you, she's got to go. James needs someone more traditional, someone who'll stay home. I've got a perfect girl in mind. Yes, Jessica would be much better for him. Jessica, my replacement, already picked out by my mother-in-law. The judge paused the playback. Mrs. Parker, these recordings appear to show a pattern of invasion of privacy and premeditated interference in your son's marriage. Are you aware that in this state, recording someone without their consent in private spaces is illegal? Margaret's composure cracked. But I had to. She's destroying our family with her career and her independence. In my day, wives knew their place. I felt tears welling up but refused to let them fall. For months, I'd endured Margaret's subtle sabotage, her snide comments about my work, her attempts to create distance between James and me. The recordings were just the latest weapon in her arsenal. Your Honor, Sarah said, we have more evidence to present, including text messages between Mrs. Margaret Parker and this Jessica person, discussing plans to end my client's marriage. As Sarah spoke, I noticed James staring at the frozen image on the screen, his mother in our bedroom, holding my journal with a look of pure satisfaction on her face. The truth was finally unraveling, one frame at a time. The judge called for a brief recess, And as the courtroom emptied, I remained seated, my eyes fixed on my hands. 8 years of marriage, countless night shifts saving children's lives, endless attempts to please a mother-in-law who had already decided to replace me. All of it captured on camera, but not in the way Margaret had intended. Sometimes the evidence you gather tells a different story than the one you thought you were telling. After the recess, Margaret's demeanor had completely changed. Gone was the triumphant smile, replaced by a defensive scowl as more videos played. Each clip she'd meant to use against me instead revealed her calculated interference in our lives. Here's another one from March 15th, the court technician announced. The footage showed me organizing a surprise birthday dinner for James. I'd spent my day off preparing his favorite meals, transforming our dining room with decorations. Then Margaret appeared in the frame, answering James's phone while I was in the kitchen. "Oh, sorry, honey. Olivia had to work late again." Margaret's voice rang clear through the speakers. She said not to wait up. I remembered that night. James never came home for the surprise dinner. When I called him, it went straight to voicemail. The food went cold, the candles melted, and I fell asleep at the table waiting for him. "Your Honor," Sarah interjected, "we have phone records showing my client never made such a call." Mrs. Parker fabricated this excuse to prevent her son from coming home that evening. James turned to his mother, his face a mask of disbelief. "Mom, I was so angry at Olivia that night. I thought she'd forgotten my birthday. I was protecting you." Margaret insisted, her voice rising. "She's never home, always putting her career first. You deserve someone who'll put family first." The next clip showed Margaret in our garden, talking on her phone. "Jessica, darling, remember what we discussed. The charity gala next week. Olivia will be working nights. It's the perfect chance for you to accompany James. Yes, wear that blue dress we picked out." I felt James stiffen beside me. The charity gala, where he'd spent the evening with Jessica, a young receptionist from his hospital's administrative office. Margaret had orchestrated the whole thing, knowing I was scheduled for the pediatric night shift. More footage played. Margaret deleting messages from my phone to James. Margaret accidentally spilling coffee on cards I'd written him. Margaret telling visitors I was probably out with friends when I was actually working saving children's lives. Mrs. Parker, the judge's voice was stern. "These recordings document a deliberate pattern of interference and manipulation. Did you consider the impact of your actions on your son's marriage?" "I did it for James." Margaret's composure finally cracked. She's never been good enough for him. Always working, taking calls at all hours. What kind of wife does that? "A pediatric nurse, Mom." James spoke up, his voice stronger now. "She takes calls because children's lives depend on her. How many times has she rushed to the hospital at midnight to save a patient?" The court fell silent as another clip began playing. This one showed me in our living room at 3 a.m., still in my scrubs, quietly crying while looking at our wedding photo. It was the night I lost my first patient, a 6-year-old girl named Sophie. Margaret's camera caught my vulnerability, but also her reaction, standing in the doorway, smirking, making no move to comfort me. "Your Honor," Sarah stood, "I'd like to submit Olivia's hospital records from that night. A young patient passed away despite my client's best efforts to save her. Rather than receiving support from her family, she was left to grieve alone while her mother-in-law documented her pain." I felt James's hand reach for mine under the table, the first contact we'd had in weeks. His fingers trembled as they intertwined with mine. "I have one final clip," Sarah announced, nodding to the technician. The screen showed Margaret in my home office again, this time with Jessica. They were going through my medical certificates and awards, tucked away in my desk drawer. "Look at all this," Margaret's voice dripped with disdain. "She thinks these make her special. Don't worry, once you're in the picture, these will disappear. James needs a wife who understands that family comes first, not some career-obsessed woman who's barely home." Jessica looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Parker, I don't know about this. James seems to really love Olivia." "Love isn't enough," Margaret snapped. "Now, here's what we'll do next." The judge stopped the playback. "I've seen enough. Mrs. Parker, you installed these cameras intending to prove your daughter-in-law was an unfit wife. Instead, you've documented your own systematic attempts to destroy your son's marriage. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Margaret looked around the courtroom, perhaps finally realizing how her plan had backfired. Her face crumpled, but not with remorse, with anger. "She took my son away from me," Margaret burst out. "Ever since they married, he's changed. He supports her career, he's proud of her work. That's not how I raised him. A wife's place is in the home, not gallivanting around saving other people's children while neglecting her own family." I felt James's grip on my hand tighten. 8 years of marriage and I'd never neglected him. Different shifts, yes. Late nights, certainly, but every moment we had together was filled with love, understanding, and mutual support. Until Margaret moved in and began poisoning our happiness with her outdated expectations and manipulative schemes. The footage she gathered as ammunition against me had instead exposed her own interference, her attempts to replace me with someone who fit her narrow view of what a wife should be. Every clip, every recorded moment revealed not my failures as a wife, but her failures as a mother who couldn't let go. As we sat there, watching Margaret's carefully constructed plan crumble around her, I realized something important. Sometimes the truth has a way of emerging, even when it's captured through a lens of deceit. The judge called for another brief recess before making his ruling. As the courtroom began to empty, I felt James lean closer. "Olivia," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "I am so sorry. I had no idea." I squeezed his hand, 8 years of love giving me the strength to face whatever came next. The cameras had stopped rolling, but our story wasn't over yet. When the judge returned, the atmosphere in the courtroom was electric with tension. Margaret sat alone now, her lawyer looking uncomfortable beside her as the judge shuffled through his notes. "Before I make my ruling," the judge began, "I have reviewed additional evidence submitted by both parties. This includes Mrs. Olivia Parker's professional accolades, patient testimonials, and most importantly, text messages between Margaret Parker and several other parties discussing her orchestrated attempts to end this marriage." He looked directly at Margaret. "Mrs. Parker, your actions go beyond simple interference. You've committed several criminal offenses, including illegal surveillance, invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." Margaret started to protest, but the judge held up his hand. "I'm issuing an immediate restraining order. You are to vacate your son's home within 24 hours and maintain a distance of at least 500 feet from both James and Olivia Parker. Furthermore, you will be required to attend counseling sessions to address your controlling behavior." James stood up. "Your Honor, if I may speak." The judge nodded. "Mom," James turned to Margaret, his voice firm but sad, "I've watched these videos in silence, seeing how you systematically tried to destroy my marriage. You interfered with our communications, manipulated situations, and tried to replace my wife with someone who fit your outdated ideals." He took my hand, pulling me to stand beside him. "But what you fail to understand is that I love Olivia precisely because of who she is. Her dedication to saving children's lives, her strength, her independence, these aren't flaws to be corrected. They're the qualities that made me fall in love with her." Margaret's face crumpled. "But James, I only wanted what was best for you." "No, Mom, you wanted what was best for you, and it stops today." As we left the courtroom, I felt lighter somehow. The truth had finally come to light, captured ironically by the very cameras meant to destroy us. That evening, back in our home, James and I began the process of healing. We found and removed all 17 cameras Margaret had hidden throughout our house, in light fixtures, behind picture frames, even in our bedroom. "I can't believe she went this far," James said, holding the last camera we'd found in his hands. "All these years, I never saw how controlling she was. I'm so sorry, Olivia." I sat beside him on our couch, the same one where Margaret had hosted her family meeting to expose my supposed failings as a wife. "You know what's ironic?" I said softly. "Those cameras captured some of our best moments too. The midnight cuddles when I got home from shifts, the way you leave coffee ready for me every morning, the quiet moments when we just hold each other after a hard day." James smiled, his first genuine smile in weeks. "She was so focused on finding evidence against you, she missed all the evidence of our love." The next day, my colleague Linda stopped by. She'd been covering my shifts at the pediatric ward during the court proceedings. "The parents have been asking about you," she said, hugging me tight, "especially little Max's mom. He's doing so much better now, thanks to your quick thinking last month." I felt tears well up, remembering how Margaret had criticized me for rushing to the hospital that night when Max had a seizure. The cameras had recorded her calling me dramatic and attention-seeking as I ran out the door to save a child's life. James wrapped his arm around me. "She's going back to work next week," he announced proudly. "Where she belongs, saving lives and making a difference." 3 months later, we received an unexpected package. Inside was a letter from Jessica, along with a USB drive. "I wanted you to have this," she wrote. "Your mother-in-law didn't just record at your house. She recorded our conversations too, planning how to break up your marriage. I'm truly sorry for my part in it. The footage is yours to do with as you wish." We never watched those recordings. Instead, James and I made our own videos of date nights, quiet moments, and celebrations of each life saved at the hospital. We created new memories, untainted by hidden cameras and secret agendas. Margaret respected the restraining order, though we heard through family that she was struggling to accept her role in what happened. The counseling sessions were helping, Pei said, forcing her to confront her controlling behavior and outdated views. 1 year later, as I sat in our garden after a long shift, James joined me with 2 cups of coffee. "You know what today is?" he asked. I smiled. "The anniversary of the court case." "No," he corrected, pulling me close. "It's the anniversary of the day we took our life back." He was right. The cameras that were meant to prove I was a bad wife had instead strengthened our marriage, showing us the importance of trust, understanding, and standing together against those who would tear us apart. As we sat there, watching the sunset, I realized that sometimes the best evidence of love isn't what's captured on camera. It's in the quiet moments, the supporting hands, and the hearts that choose each other every single day. The cameras were gone, but our story continued, stronger than ever. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living well, loving deeply, and knowing that no amount of surveillance can capture the true essence of a marriage built on trust, respect, and unconditional love. "My son won't share any assets with you," Victoria announced smugly over her morning tea, each word dripping with satisfaction. "You're just a temporary decoration until he finds someone more suitable." I kept arranging the flowers in the crystal vase, my hands steady despite the venom in her voice. "My name is Olivia, and at 32, I was listening to my mother-in-law gleefully inform me that my 5-year marriage was nothing more than an extended audition for a role I'd never get to play. Marcus and I have discussed everything," she continued, clearly disappointed by my lack of reaction. "The house, the investments, even this vacation property, it's all protected. You'll leave with exactly what you brought." "Nothing." I placed the last rose in the vase, adjusting it until it was perfect. The irony of this conversation taking place in her beloved lakeside mansion wasn't lost on me. If only she knew what I discovered in her husband's old study 3 months ago. "That's interesting," I said quietly, meeting her gaze. "Does Marcus know about the debt on this property?" Victoria's teacup clattered against its saucer. "What are you talking about?" "The second mortgage you took out last year. The one that's 3 months overdue." Her face paled slightly before she recovered. "You're delusional. This house has been paid off for years." I smiled, remembering the stack of unopened bills I'd found while cleaning her husband's study after his passing. Victoria had always been careless with money, hiding her shopping sprees and gambling debts from her family. Her husband had covered for her for years, but his death had left her vulnerable and desperate. "The bank called yesterday," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "They're planning to foreclose next month." "That's impossible." Victoria stood up, her composure cracking. "I would know if you've been opening your mail or checking your accounts." I picked up my purse. "You might want to start. I hear there's a buyer interested in acquiring foreclosed properties in this area." I left her standing there, her face a mix of fury and fear. What she didn't know was that I'd spent the last 3 months preparing for this moment. My anonymous holding company, funded by my own successful interior design business, the one she always mocked as a cute hobby, was positioned to buy the property the moment it went into foreclosure. Victoria had never bothered to learn anything about me beyond the fact that I'd grown up in a middle-class family. She didn't know about my business degree, my thriving company, or the fact that I'd been quietly building my own empire while she dismissed me as a gold digger. The real shock came later that evening when Marcus came home. I was in our kitchen preparing dinner when he dropped the bomb. Olivia, we need to talk, he said, his tone serious. Mother told me you've been snooping through private family documents. I turned from the stove, studying my husband's face. The man I'd loved for 5 years looked like a stranger, his features hardened by his mother's influence. Is that what she told you? I asked, wiping my hands on a towel. Did she mention the foreclosure notice? Marcus waved dismissively. Mother says you're making things up, creating drama because you're insecure about your position in this family. My position? I couldn't help but laugh. You mean the position where I'm just a temporary decoration? His face flushed. She told you about our conversation. She did. I kept my voice steady. She also mentioned that you've been planning to protect all the assets from me. Were you ever going to tell me yourself? It's not like that, he stammered. Mother just thinks. No, I cut him off. The question is, what do you think, Marcus? Are you capable of thinking anything your mother hasn't approved first? He stared at me, mouth open but no words coming out. In that moment, I saw him clearly, not the successful businessman I married, but the little boy still desperately seeking his mother's approval. The bank called again, I said, pulling out my phone. They're moving up the foreclosure date on the vacation house. Victoria needs to come up with $2.5 million by the end of the month. Marcus's face went pale. That's impossible. The house is paid off. Mother would never. I showed him the foreclosure notice. Your mother's been hiding things from you too, Marcus. The difference is, I did my research. He sank into a kitchen chair, running his hands through his hair. This can't be happening. That house, it's been in our family for generations. Not for much longer, I said, turning back to the stove. Unless someone buys it at auction. I hear there's already an interested party. We have to help her, Marcus declared, standing up. We can use our savings, take out a loan. I turned off the burner and faced him. Our savings? The ones you've been hiding from me? Or do you mean my money, which you and your mother think I don't deserve to keep? The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked lost, caught between his mother's manipulation and the reality crashing down around him. I need to go talk to her, he finally said, heading for the door. Before you go, I called after him. You might want to ask her about the gambling debts too, and the credit cards in your father's name that she's still using. He stopped, hand on the doorknob. How do you know all this? Because unlike you and Victoria, I don't underestimate people just because they don't come from money. I met his gaze steadily. Your father knew about everything. He left me a letter before he died, along with all the documentation. He knew someone would need to protect this family from your mother's secrets eventually. Marcus left without another word, but I knew this was just the beginning. Victoria's carefully constructed world was about to crumble, and she had no idea that the person she dismissed as nothing was about to become her worst nightmare. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer's number. It was time to set the next phase of my plan in motion. Victoria wanted to play games with family assets. She was about to learn that she wasn't the only one who knew how to play. The next morning, Victoria's perfectly manicured facade began to crack. I watched from my office window as she stormed up our driveway, waving papers frantically. Marcus had spent the night at her house, presumably dealing with the aftermath of my revelations. You, she shrieked the moment I opened the door. What have you done? I stepped aside, letting her enter. Would you like some tea, Victoria? You seem upset. Don't play innocent with me, she spat, throwing a stack of bank notices onto my coffee table. The bank says there's an anonymous buyer. It's you, isn't it? You're trying to steal our family property. I sat down calmly, crossing my legs. I thought you said the house was paid off. Isn't that what you told Marcus? Her face contorted with rage. You had no right to go through Gerald's papers. Those were private family matters. Your late husband gave me those papers, I corrected her, along with a very detailed letter about your gambling habits and shopping addictions. He was worried about what would happen to the family after he was gone. Victoria sank into the armchair, her bravado deflating slightly. Gerald would never. But he did, I interrupted, pulling out an envelope from my desk. He knew you'd never accept me, that you tried to turn Marcus against me. He also knew about the money you've been borrowing against the vacation house. I handed her the letter. Her hands trembled as she read her late husband's words, his elegant handwriting detailing years of financial cover-ups and manipulation. Why didn't he ever say anything? She whispered, more to herself than to me. Because he loved you, I said simply. He spent years protecting you from yourself, but he knew it couldn't last forever. Victoria's eyes narrowed. So what now? You'll use this to blackmail us? Force Marcus to sign over assets to you? I couldn't help but laugh. Victoria, I don't want your money. I have my own. What I want is for you to understand something. I'm not the gold digger you think I am. I'm not here to steal your family's wealth. I'm here because I love your son, even if he can't stand up to you. Just then, Marcus walked in. He looked exhausted, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. He stopped short when he saw us. Mother, what are you doing here? Your wife, Victoria began, but I cut her off. I was just explaining to Victoria about the buyer interested in the vacation house, I said smoothly. Meridian Holdings has made a very generous offer, considering the circumstances. Marcus frowned. Meridian Holdings? I've never heard of them. They're new, I explained, but they're willing to clear the debt and allow the current occupant to remain as a tenant, if certain conditions are met. Victoria's head snapped up. What conditions? I stood walking to the window. Full disclosure of all financial dealings to Marcus. No more hidden debts, no more secret gambling. And I turned to face them both. A public apology for the ways you've treated me over the years. This is blackmail, Victoria hissed. No, I corrected her. This is a chance for redemption. Gerald wanted this family to heal, not tear itself apart over money and pride. Marcus stepped forward, looking between his mother and me. The company, Meridian Holdings. It's yours, isn't it? I met his gaze steadily. Yes, I set it up 3 months ago after finding Gerald's letter. I knew Victoria would never accept help directly from me. You deceitful little, Victoria began, but Marcus raised his hand. Stop, Mother. Just stop. He looked tired, defeated. All these years you've been lying to me. About the money, about Father's wishes. And Olivia? He turned to me. You've been protecting us, haven't you? Even while we treated you like an outsider. I felt tears prick at my eyes but held them back. I love you, Marcus. Despite everything, I love this family. But things need to change. Victoria stood abruptly. I need time to think. You have until the end of the week, I said firmly. After that, the house goes to auction, and I can't guarantee the next buyer will be as understanding. She left without another word, her shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. Marcus stayed, standing awkwardly in the middle of our living room. Why didn't you tell me? He asked finally. Would you have believed me over your mother? He flinched at my words but didn't argue. We both knew the truth. I found Dad's letter in my office this morning, he said quietly. He explained everything. About Mother's gambling, the loans, how he'd been covering for her for years. He looked at me with new eyes. He also wrote about you, how you were the daughter he never had, how he trusted you to do what was right for this family. I felt my composure crack slightly. Gerald had been the only one who'd ever truly accepted me, who'd seen past my background to who I really was. I'm so sorry, Olivia, Marcus continued, stepping closer. I've been blind, weak. I let Mother control everything, including how I treated the person I love most in this world. I wanted to fall into his arms, to let his words heal the years of hurt, but we weren't there yet. There was still more to be done. If we're going to fix this, I said carefully, things have to change. No more letting your mother run our lives. No more secrets about money or property. We either become true partners, or we end it, he finished. I understand. And I choose you, Olivia. I should have chosen you all along. He reached for my hand, and this time, I let him take it. It wasn't a perfect resolution. There were still conversations to be had, trust to rebuild. But it was a start. As we stood there, I thought about the vacation house by the lake, about Gerald's letter, and about the long road ahead. Victoria might never fully accept me, but she would learn to respect me. And maybe, just maybe, this family could heal after all. A week later, I sat in my lawyer's office, watching Victoria read through the Meridian Holdings contract. Her hands still trembled slightly, but her face had lost the venomous anger I'd grown so accustomed to seeing. This is surprisingly generous, she admitted reluctantly, looking up from the papers. You'll clear all the debts, and I can stay in the house as a tenant. With conditions, I reminded her. Complete financial transparency, no more gambling, no hidden credit cards, and family counseling, all of us. Marcus, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. He'd spent the past week discovering the full extent of his mother's financial deceptions. The vacation house was just the tip of the iceberg. The alternative, my lawyer added professionally, is immediate foreclosure and public auction. Given the circumstances, Mrs. Harrison, this offer is exceptionally fair. Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers traced the edges of the contract. And this stays private? No one outside the family needs to know. As long as you comply with all conditions, I confirmed. This isn't about humiliating you, Victoria. It's about healing this family. She picked up the pen, then hesitated. Gerald really left you that letter. Telling you everything. I pulled out the worn envelope I carried for months, sliding it across the table. Read it yourself. Her eyes filled with tears as she recognized her late husband's handwriting. My dear Olivia, I know my wife will never willingly accept you, but I've watched you build your business from nothing, seen your strength and integrity. You're the daughter I always wanted, and I trust you to protect this family when I'm gone, even from themselves. The documentation in my study will explain everything. Use it wisely, with compassion but firmness. Victoria needs boundaries she won't set for herself, and Marcus needs to learn to stand on his own. I'm trusting you with my greatest treasures, my family's future and their chance at redemption. With love and faith, Gerald. Victoria wiped her eyes, carefully refolding the letter. Without another word, she signed the contract. The next few months brought changes none of us could have predicted. Victoria, stripped of her financial secrets and forced to confront our addictions, slowly began to change. The family counseling sessions, though initially tense, gave us all a space to speak honestly about years of hurt and manipulation. I was jealous, Victoria admitted during one session, surprising us all. You came from nothing, but you built something real. I've just been pretending all my life, hiding behind family money and Gerald's protection. Marcus found his voice too, standing up to his mother for the first time in his life. I can't be the son you wanted, he told her. But I can be a better husband, a better man, like father wanted me to be. As for me, I kept my word. Meridian Holdings maintained Victoria's dignity in public while privately ensuring she stuck to her promises. The vacation house, rather than becoming a symbol of division, slowly transformed into a place of healing. 6 months after the contract signing, we all gathered there for a family dinner. I watched Victoria in the kitchen, actually cooking instead of ordering staff to do it. Marcus set the table, laughing at something his mother said, a sound I hadn't heard in years. You've done the impossible, our family therapist had told me the day before. You've given them a chance to become the family they could have been all along. After dinner, Victoria pulled me aside onto the lakeside porch. The sunset painted the water in shades of gold and pink, reminding me of all the reasons Gerald had loved this place. I'll never be the mother-in-law you deserved, she said quietly, but I'm trying to be better. Gerald was right about you. You protected this family even when we didn't deserve it. I touched the locket at my neck, Gerald's last Christmas gift to me. We're all learning, Victoria. That's what family does. Inside, I heard Marcus loading the dishwasher, another small but significant change. He'd grown too, stepping out of his mother's shadow to become a true partner in our marriage. Later that night, as Marcus and I walked along the lake, he asked, "Do you regret any of it? Taking on mother's mess, fighting for this family?" I thought about Gerald's letter, about Victoria's slow transformation, about our own strengthened marriage. No, I said honestly, your father saw something in this family worth saving. He was right. Marcus stopped, pulling me into his arms. He was right about you too. You're the strongest person I know, Olivia. Thank you for not giving up on us. As we stood there, watching the stars reflect on the lake's surface, I thought about how sometimes the greatest victories come not from destroying our enemies, but from transforming them into family. The vacation house stood behind us, lights glowing warmly in the darkness. It was no longer just Victoria's sanctuary or a symbol of family wealth. It had become something more valuable, a testament to the power of tough love, honest confrontation, and the kind of strength that chooses reconciliation over revenge. Gerald would have been proud. No need for marriage registration or property division, Mark said, leaning against our bedroom doorframe with a smug smile. Just pack your things and leave. His girlfriend Amanda stood beside him, her diamond necklace, my birthday gift from last year, glinting mockingly around her neck. I folded another sweater, placing it carefully in my suitcase. You're right, I replied, my voice steady. No need for complications. Mark's self-satisfied expression faltered slightly. He'd expected tears, pleading, maybe even a fight. Instead, I was calmly packing my belongings as if I were preparing for a weekend trip. My name is Olivia, and after 8 years of marriage, my husband had just announced he wanted me gone so his 24-year-old girlfriend could move in. The girlfriend who'd been my personal assistant for the past year. The girlfriend who'd organized our anniversary dinner 3 months ago. That's it. Mark stepped into the room, his confidence wavering. You're just going to leave. I zipped up my suitcase, finally meeting his eyes. Isn't that what you want? Amanda wrapped her arm around his waist, but I caught the slight furrow in her brow. This wasn't going according to their script. They'd expected drama, resistance, something they could use to paint me as the hysterical soon-to-be ex-wife. Well, yes, Mark recovered, puffing up again. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. I'll have my lawyer draw up simple divorce papers. You sign, we go our separate ways, no messy property disputes. I nodded, pulling out my phone. Speaking of property, I scrolled through my photos, finding what I needed. You might want to see this before we finalize anything. Mark's face darkened. We're not negotiating here, Olivia. The house is in my name. My family's money paid for it. You're leaving with what you brought into this marriage. I turned my phone screen toward him. Are you sure about that? The color drained from his face as he recognized the document, our marriage registration from 8 years ago. The one he thought had never been filed because he'd forgotten to submit it after our ceremony. That's not possible, he stammered. We never registered the marriage. I made sure. He caught himself, but it was too late. You made sure? I kept my voice light. Made sure of what, Mark? That you could throw me out whenever you wanted. That I have no legal claim to anything we built together. Amanda's grip on his waist loosened. Mark? What's she talking about? I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Your boyfriend here thought he was clever. Plan a beautiful wedding, go through the ceremony, but never file the paperwork. That way, he could avoid any messy property division if things went south. I turned to Mark, whose face had turned an interesting shade of gray. Isn't that right? You're lying, he snarled, but his eyes were fixed on the document displayed on my phone. That's fake. The registrar's office would disagree. I picked up my suitcase. You see, Mark, I figured out your little plan about a week after our wedding, when you said you'd handle the registration, but then kept making excuses about why it was taking so long. Amanda stepped away from him, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror. You mean you're actually married? Very legally married, I confirmed. I went to the registrar's office myself, filed the paperwork properly. Mark was just too arrogant to ever check. He assumed I was as naive as he thought I was. Mark lunged for my phone, but I was already sliding it back into my pocket. It doesn't matter, he spat. You can't prove. I have copies, I cut him off. Multiple copies stored in very safe places, along with 8 years' worth of financial records, property documents, and some very interesting emails about how you've been handling the company accounts. The mention of the company made him freeze, his family's precious business where he'd recently been made CEO. The position he'd gotten largely because of my behind-the-scenes work modernizing their outdated systems and processes. You wouldn't, he whispered. I wouldn't what? Ensure I get my fair share of what we built together. Protect myself from your attempts to leave me with nothing. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You taught me well, Mark. Always have a backup plan. Isn't that what you always said? Amanda was backing toward the door, her face pale. I think I should go. Wait, Mark called after her, but she was already hurrying down the hallway. The front door slammed a moment later. I picked up my suitcase, enjoying the way Mark seemed to have forgotten how to speak. I'll be staying at the lake house, I said, referring to the property we'd bought 2 years ago. The one I'd insisted on having jointly titled. My lawyer will be in touch about the property division and divorce terms. Olivia, he finally managed, his voice hoarse. We can talk about this. Now you want to talk? I shook my head. 8 years, Mark. 8 years of me supporting your career, managing your family's business transitions, playing the perfect wife while you planned to make sure I could be discarded without consequences. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and that merger you're planning, the one that's supposed to be announced next week, you might want to hold off on that. There are some irregularities in the paperwork that need to be addressed first. His face went from gray to white. Those irregularities were his doing. Creative accounting I'd discovered months ago but hadn't confronted him about. I've been gathering evidence instead, building my own backup plan while he thought I was obliviously happy in our marriage. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice shook. Am I? I stepped into the hallway. I guess you'll find out. By the way, that diamond necklace Amanda was wearing, the one you gave me for my birthday, I'll need that back. It's on the list of marital assets my lawyer will be reviewing. I left him standing in our bedroom, surrounded by a life he thought he could take away from me with a few simple words. He had no idea that while he was planning his exit strategy, I had been 10 steps ahead, preparing for exactly this moment. Some might call it paranoid, keeping such careful records and planning for the worst. I called it learning from the master of manipulation himself. Mark had taught me well, just not the lessons he'd intended. As I loaded my suitcase into my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I deleted it without responding. Her apology meant nothing to me now. I had bigger concerns, like making sure Mark understood exactly what happens when you underestimate the woman you thought you could discard. I pulled out of the driveway, leaving behind the house we'd shared for 8 years. But unlike what Mark had planned, I wasn't leaving empty-handed. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about being prepared to win before the battle even begins. Part 2, 1,200 words. The lake house was exactly as I'd left it 2 weeks ago, when I come up here alone to relax and recharge, or so I told Mark. In reality, I'd been meeting with my lawyer, carefully laying out the groundwork for what I knew was coming. I hadn't always been this calculating. When I first married Mark, I was genuinely in love, believing we were building a life together. The discovery of his deception about our marriage registration could have broken me. Instead, it had awakened something else, a determination to protect myself, to play the long game. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since I left the house. Mark's family was in full damage control mode. His mother, Eleanor, had called 6 times. His sister had sent a string of increasingly hostile texts. I ignored them all, focusing instead on unpacking and settling into what would be my new temporary home. Around sunset, a familiar black Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Eleanor. I watched from the window as she emerged, perfectly coiffed as always, her expression set in grim determination. I opened the door before she could knock. Olivia, she said, her voice clipped. We need to talk. I stepped aside, letting her enter. She'd always loved this house, had even helped decorate it. Now she looked around like she was seeing it for the first time, probably calculating its value as part of the assets she thought she could help her son protect. Would you like some tea? I asked, maintaining the politeness she drilled into me over the years. Don't play games with me, she snapped. What exactly do you think you're doing? Mark told me about your claims. I settled into an armchair, gesturing for her to sit. Claims? You mean the legal documentation of my marriage to your son. Or perhaps you're referring to the evidence of financial irregularities in the company books. Her face tightened. You're making a mistake, dear. This vindictiveness doesn't suit you. Vindictiveness? I couldn't help but laugh. Is that what you call protecting my legal rights? Tell me, Eleanor, did you know about Mark's plan when we got married? About his intention to keep the registration unfiled? She shifted slightly, and I had my answer. Of course she'd known. She probably helped him plan it. We were protecting the family interests, she said finally. You have to understand, with Mark's position in the company. I understand perfectly. I cut her off. You wanted someone who would support Mark's career, help modernize the family business, but never have any real claim to it. How convenient that must have seemed. Eleanor's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. What do you want, Olivia? Money? A settlement? Name your price, and we can end this quietly. I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. What I want is exactly what I'm legally entitled to. Half of everything Mark and I built together during our very legitimate marriage, including my shares in the company. She blanched. The company isn't part of this. Actually, it is. Those shares Mark transferred to me last year for tax purposes, they're mine. Legally, and unlike our marriage registration, I know he checked those documents very carefully before signing them. Eleanor stood abruptly. You're making a serious mistake. This family has connections. So do I interrupted smoothly. Would you like to know who else has copies of those financial records I mentioned? The ones showing how creative Mark has been with the merger numbers? She sank back into her seat, her face pale. You wouldn't dare expose that. It would destroy the company. I don't want to, I said honestly. Unlike your son, I actually care about the people whose livelihoods depend on the company's success. But I will protect myself, Eleanor, whatever it takes. She was quiet for a long moment, studying me with new eyes. You've changed, she said finally. No, I corrected her. I've grown. There's a difference. After Eleanor left, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the deck. The lake was peaceful in the gathering dusk, its surface like glass. My phone buzzed again. Mark this time, probably having heard from his mother. His message was both predictable and disappointing. You're bluffing. You don't have the nerve to follow through with this. I took a sip of wine and typed my response. Check your email. I just sent you and the board members a preliminary report about those merger discrepancies. Consider it a sample of what full disclosure would look like. His reply was immediate. You'll regret this. I smiled, remembering all the times he used threats to get his way. How he taught me that power was about making people fear the consequences of crossing you. He'd never imagined I'd learn that lesson so well. My lawyer called as I was finishing my wine. The board wants an emergency meeting tomorrow, she said. Your email certainly got their attention. Good, I replied. Make sure they understand that I'm willing to keep things quiet. As long as Mark approaches our divorce negotiations reasonably. He won't have a choice, she said. By the way, Amanda reached out to my office. She wants to provide a statement about Mark's behavior, including some interesting text messages where he discussed his plans regarding your marriage registration. I hadn't expected that, but I wasn't surprised. Amanda was young, but she wasn't stupid. She'd seen which way the wind was blowing and decided to save herself. As night fell over the lake, I thought about the path that had led here. 8 years of playing the perfect wife while quietly preparing for this moment. Some might call it cold, calculating, even manipulative. I called it survival. Mark had taught me well, about power, about leverage, about always having a backup plan. He just never expected me to use those lessons against him. Tomorrow would bring the board meeting, negotiations, probably more attempts at intimidation from his family. But for now, I sat in the peaceful darkness, knowing that while Mark had been playing checkers, I'd mastered chess. And in this game, the queen was the most powerful piece on the board meeting was everything I expected and more. I sat quietly at the conference table, watching Mark's carefully constructed world crumble around him. His father, the former CEO, looked like he aged 10 years overnight. Eleanor sat rigid in her chair, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the polished wood. These allegations are serious, the head of the board said, shuffling through the preliminary report I provided. If even half of these discrepancies are accurate. They're all accurate, I interjected softly. Every transaction, every altered number, every hidden account. I have the original documents to prove it. Mark's face was a mask of barely contained rage. This is blackmail, he spat. She's trying to extort us because of our personal issues. I kept my voice level. No, this is accountability. I'm simply ensuring that both our divorce and the company's dealings are handled legally and transparently. The board members exchanged glances. They'd known me for years as Mark's efficient, supportive wife. The woman who'd helped modernize their systems, who'd attended every company function with a smile. They'd never expected the steel beneath the silk. What exactly do you want? Mark's father finally asked, his voice heavy. A fair divorce settlement. My legal share of our marital assets, and I'll retain my company shares with a seat on the board. The room erupted in protests, but I held up my hand. In return, these financial irregularities never become public. The merger proceeds, after the numbers are corrected, of course. And Mark keeps his position, though I suggest more oversight. Eleanor stood up suddenly. You can't honestly expect. Mother, Mark cut her off. His face had taken on an odd expression, something between respect and fear. She can, and she will. I met his eyes across the table. For the first time, he was seeing me clearly, not as the wife he could discard, but as someone who'd learned from watching him, who'd taken his lessons about power and control and perfected them. The negotiations took hours. By the end, I had everything I'd wanted. a fair division of assets, my board position, and ironclad legal protections. Mark looked shell-shocked, as if he couldn't quite believe how completely his plan had backfired. As the board members filed out, he caught my arm. "How long?" he asked. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day I discovered you never filed our marriage registration," I replied honestly. "You taught me well, Mark. Always have leverage. Always be prepared. Never let anyone see your full hand until you're ready to play it." He let go of my arm, laughing bitterly. "I created my own worst enemy." "No," I corrected him. "You created your match. I just proved to be better at the game." 3 months later, I sat in my new office overlooking the city. The divorce was finalized, the assets divided, and the company was thriving under stricter financial oversight. Amanda had moved on to a job in another state, her youth and ambition focused on building her own career rather than attaching herself to someone else's. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor, surprisingly. Since the board meeting, our relationship had shifted from antagonistic to something approaching grudging respect. "Dinner next week," she wrote. "There's a new board member I'd like you to meet." I smiled, remembering how she'd once tried to threaten me with the family's connections. Now she was offering to make introductions. Power recognized power, after all. Mark and I maintained a strictly professional relationship at board meetings. Sometimes I caught him watching me with a mixture of regret and admiration. He'd wanted a wife he could control and discard. Instead, he'd gotten an equal who'd outplayed him at his own game. The lake house became my permanent residence, its peaceful waters a reminder of how far I'd come. I learned that strength wasn't about being cruel or calculating, it was about being prepared, about knowing your worth, and about never letting anyone else define your value. One evening, as I sat on the deck watching the sunset, I received an unexpected email from Mark. "You were right, about everything. I'm sorry." I didn't respond. His apology, like his previous threats, meant nothing now. I'd built something stronger than his regret. A life on my terms, secured by my own wisdom and determination. Some might say I was harsh, turning his manipulation tactics against him. But in the end, I protected not just myself, but the company and the employees who depended on it. Sometimes the kindest victory is the one that prevents greater harm. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the lake in shades of gold and purple. I'd lost a husband but gained something more valuable. The unshakable knowledge that I was capable of not just surviving, but thriving on my own terms. Mark had tried to teach me about power through control and fear. Instead, I learned about power through preparation and principle. In the end, that made all the difference. As darkness settled over the lake, I raised my glass to the night sky. Here's to lessons learned, battles won, and the strength that comes from facing betrayal with grace and strategy rather than fury and defeat. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting ahead. "I hate you. You're not our real mom." Emma's words echoed through the house as she slammed her bedroom door. Her twin brother Ethan stood in the hallway, his expression cold and distant. "Don't ever talk to us again," he added before disappearing into his room. I stood there, frozen, my heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. My name is Olivia Turner, and at 42, I just watched my own children, my precious twins, turn against me because of a carefully crafted lie. It started 3 weeks ago when my sister-in-law, Diana, moved in with us temporarily after her divorce. She'd always resented me, but I never imagined she'd go this far. While I was away at a teacher's conference, she told my 16-year-old twins a story about their real mother, a woman she claimed I had forced out of their lives when they were just babies. "Your real mom loved you so much," she told them, spinning a tale of how I had supposedly swooped in during their parents' rough patch, stolen their father's heart, and driven their birth mother away. "Olivia made sure she could never contact you again." I found out what she'd done when I returned home to find my children's photos of me turned face down, their doors locked, and their eyes filled with hatred. My husband James was away on a business trip, and Diana had perfectly timed her poison. Now, sitting in my home office surrounded by 16 years of memories, first steps, birthday parties, school plays, I felt the weight of their rejection crushing me. On my desk sat the twins' baby album, filled with photos of my pregnancy, their birth, every precious moment. But Diana had convinced them these were all elaborate lies. They were too young to remember, she told them. "Olivia's been pretending all along." Why do you think there are no photos of you as newborns with her in the hospital? Of course there weren't. I'd been in a coma for 2 weeks after a complicated cesarean. James had taken photos, but I wasn't in them because I was fighting for my life. It was a detail I never shared with the twins, not wanting them to carry that burden. My phone buzzed. Another message from Diana. They deserve to know the truth about their real mother. The irony of her words would have been laughable if it hadn't hurt so much. I am their real mother. Every stretch mark, every sleepless night, every moment of their lives was etched into my heart. But Diana had twisted everything, using the gaps in their childhood memories to plant seeds of doubt. I opened my laptop, staring at the draft email I'd written to James. How do you tell your husband that his sister has destroyed your relationship with your children? That she's used her position as their beloved aunt to tear apart our family? The sounds of the twins moving around upstairs made my heart ache. Just last week, Emma had crawled into my bed during a thunderstorm, seeking comfort like she had since she was little. Now she wouldn't even look at me. Diana's voice drifted down from upstairs, consoling them. I know it's hard, but you deserve to know. Your real mom would be so proud of you both. I closed my eyes, remembering the day they were born, the complications that had nearly taken all three of us. The moment I finally got to hold them after waking from the coma. James had placed them in my arms, tears streaming down his face, telling me how strong I was, how he'd almost lost us all. A knock at my office door startled me. It was Ethan, his face a mask of anger. We found Mom's letters, he said, throwing a handful of papers on my desk. The ones you hid from us. My hands trembled as I picked up the papers. They were letters all right, but I'd never seen them before. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the dates impossible. They were supposedly written when I was still in the hospital, unconscious. Diana found them in the attic, he continued, his voice cold. She says you've been hiding them all these years. I examined the letters more closely, my blood running cold. These weren't just fake. They were an elaborate deception. Diana had gone to extraordinary lengths to create this fiction, right down to the weathered paper and faded ink. Ethan, I started, but he cut me off. Save it. We know everything now. How you made her leave. How you've been lying to us our whole lives. We're going to find her, our real mom, and there's nothing you can do about it. As he stormed out, I heard Deanna's satisfied sigh from the hallway. She'd orchestrated this perfectly, taking advantage of teenage vulnerability and family trust to tear my world apart. I picked up my phone again, this time dialing Dr. Sarah Matthews, the obstetrician who had saved our lives 16 years ago. If Diana wanted to play with fire, she was about to learn that some truths can't be buried, no matter how elaborate the lies. Sarah, it's Olivia Turner. I need your help. It's about the twins and the day they were born. The next few days would change everything, but not in the way Diana expected. She thought she'd destroyed me, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. A mother's love isn't just about biology. It's about every moment, every sacrifice, every breath. And I had 16 years of truth on my side. As I hung up the phone, I heard the twins laughing upstairs with Diana, their voices carrying through the house that suddenly felt foreign. But I wasn't going to let her win. The truth would come out, and when it did, Diana would learn that some bonds can't be broken by lies, no matter how convincing they might seem. The graduation ceremony was in 3 months. Diana didn't know it yet, but she had just set in motion a series of events that would expose not just her lies, but the depths of her own deception. And I would be there, standing at the podium as the guest of honor, ready to tell a story she never saw coming. The weeks following Diana's revelation were a blur of silent dinners and closed doors. James had finally returned from his business trip, but even he seemed unsure how to handle the situation. Diana had played her cards well, showing him the forged letters and playing on his protective instincts. Maybe we should tell them everything, he suggested one night, his voice heavy with concern. About the complications, the coma. I shook my head, clutching the manila envelope Dr. Matthews had sent over. Not yet. Diana needs to understand what she's done first. Inside that envelope lay the truth. Medical records, birth certificates, photographs from the hospital security cameras showing Diana's absence during those critical 2 weeks. She hadn't even visited when her own brother was falling apart, worried he might lose both his wife and newborn children. The twins' graduation ceremony was approaching, and as the head of the English department at their high school, I was scheduled to give a speech. Diana didn't know this. She'd been too busy poisoning my children's minds to pay attention to school announcements. One afternoon, I found Emma in the attic, going through old boxes. She stiffened when she saw me but didn't leave. Progress, however small. "What are you looking for?" I asked softly. "More letters," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "Aunt Diana says there must be more." I watched her dig through memories of her childhood. Handmade Mother's Day cards, school projects, family photos. Each item told our story. But Diana had made her doubt even these tangible pieces of our life together. "You know," I said, sitting on an old trunk, "your first word was mama. You said it in the middle of the night when you had a fever. Ethan said it the next morning, not wanting to be outdone by his sister." Emma paused, her hand hovering over a baby book. For a moment, I saw confusion flicker across her face. These were memories Diana couldn't explain away, moments too personal, too real to be fabricated. That's not true," she stammered, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "The scar on your left knee? You got it climbing the apple tree in Grandma's backyard. You were trying to rescue a cat that didn't actually need rescuing. I carried you to the emergency room while you apologized for ruining your new dress." Emma's hand unconsciously went to her knee. These weren't facts Diana would know, couldn't know. She hadn't been part of our lives then, too busy with her own failed marriages and dramatic exits. The next day, I found a note under my office door, in Ethan's handwriting. "If you're really our mom, why didn't you fight harder when we were babies?" My heart ached. Diana's story had created a wound that only the truth could heal, but timing was everything. Dr. Matthews had warned me about dropping too many revelations at once. Let them start questioning on their own, she'd advised. Diana, meanwhile, was getting bolder. She started inviting friends over, speaking loudly about the poor children and their tragic story. Each word was carefully chosen to cement her narrative, but she'd made one crucial mistake. One of her friends was a nurse at the same hospital where the twins were born. "Diana?" I overheard the friend say one afternoon. "I don't remember you ever visiting when the twins were born. Weren't you in Europe with your second husband?" The silence that followed was deafening. Diana quickly changed the subject, but the damage was done. Small cracks were beginning to appear in her carefully constructed facade. 2 weeks before graduation, I was preparing my speech when Ethan appeared in my office doorway. He looked troubled, clutching something in his hand. "I found this," he said, placing a worn hospital bracelet on my desk. "It has your name on it. Same day we were born." I picked up the bracelet, memories flooding back. I'd worn it for those 2 weeks in the coma, James refusing to let the nurses remove it even after they said I might not wake up. "There's something else," Ethan continued, his voice uncertain. "I asked Grandma about the letters Aunt Diana found. She said Diana wasn't even in the country when we were born." The truth was starting to unravel Diana's lies, thread by thread. But she wasn't going down without a fight. That evening, she announced at dinner that she'd hired a private investigator to find their real mother. James nearly choked on his food, looking at me with panic in his eyes. I simply smiled. "That's interesting," I said calmly. "I look forward to seeing what they find." Diana's confident smile faltered slightly. She hadn't expected this reaction. Later that night, I heard the twins whispering in Emma's room. "But why isn't she upset?" Emma asked. "If she really stole us, wouldn't she be trying to stop us?" "Maybe," Ethan replied. "We don't have the whole story." Diana had underestimated the intelligence of my children. They were starting to see the holes in her story, questioning the inconsistencies she couldn't explain. The next morning, I left a photo album on the kitchen table, not the usual family photos, but medical pictures from the day of their birth. Me, unconscious in the hospital bed. James holding their tiny hands through the incubator windows. The dates clearly visible on every image. When Diana came down for breakfast and saw the album, she went pale. She grabbed it, trying to hide it before the twins could see. But she was too late. They had already been looking through it when she came in. "Aunt Diana," Emma said, her voice shaking. "Why are you in Europe in your Facebook memories from when we were born if you were there with our real mom?" The graduation ceremony was 3 days away. Diana's lies were unraveling faster than she could spin new ones, and soon she would have nowhere left to hide. I sealed the final envelope containing my graduation speech, knowing that the truth it contained would change everything. Diana thought she had written the ending to this story, but she was about to learn that some tales can only be told by those who live them. And I had lived every single moment, from the first heartbeat to the last lie. Graduation day arrived with a crisp morning breeze. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement as families filed in, finding their seats among the sea of proud parents and relatives. Diana sat with our family, her usual confident smile now tinged with nervousness as she watched me take my place at the podium. She hadn't seen the program until now. Her face paled when she read, "Keynote speaker, Mrs. Olivia Turner, head of English department and recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award for Educational Excellence." The ceremony began with the usual proceedings, the principal's welcome, the valedictorian's speech. Then came the moment that would change everything. And now, the principal announced, "I'd like to invite Mrs. Turner to share a special message with our graduating class," particularly noting her unique perspective as both an educator and a parent of two of our graduating seniors. I'd approached the podium, my heart steady. The twins sat among their classmates, their expressions a mix of confusion and apprehension. Diana shifted uncomfortably in her seat. 16 years ago, I began. I lay in a hospital bed at St. Mary's, fighting for my life after giving birth to twins. A murmur rippled through the audience. The doctors had warned me about the risks of carrying twins at my age, but some things are worth fighting for. I pulled out the first photograph, the hospital security footage showing James rushing through the corridors. This was taken at 3:42 a.m., June 15, 2007. My husband had just been told he might lose all three of us. Diana's face had lost all color. In the graduate section, Emma and Ethan sat completely still, their eyes fixed on the screen behind me. For 2 weeks, I lay in a coma while my babies fought their own battles in the NICU. Their father never left the hospital, sleeping in chairs, praying for a miracle. And where was their aunt, who claims to know so much about their birth? I paused, letting the question hang in the air. According to her own social media posts, enjoying her honeymoon in Paris with husband number 2. The next slide showed Diana's Facebook memories, the ones she'd forgotten to delete. Her in front of the Eiffel Tower, dated exactly when she claimed to be witnessing this supposed tragedy unfold. The truth about family isn't just in DNA or birth certificates. It's in the smallest moments, the first words, the scraped knees, the thunderstorm comfort sessions. It's in knowing that your daughter is allergic to strawberries but loves strawberry-scented shampoo. It's in remembering that your son sleeps with his left sock on inside out because he thinks it brings him luck during tests. Tears were flowing freely now, not just mine, but Emma's and Ethan's too. Diana started to stand, but James firmly pulled her back down. "To my children," I continued, my voice strong, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the coma, about how close we came to losing each other before we even had a chance to begin. I wanted to protect you from that fear. But I'm not sorry for a single moment we shared since then, because every one of those moments is real, true, and ours." I pulled out the final piece of evidence, the DNA test results Diana's private investigator had secretly sent to my email yesterday, along with an apology for being part of her scheme. And to those who think they can rewrite history with forged letters and invented memories, remember this: the truth has a way of revealing itself. Always. The auditorium erupted in applause as I finished. Through tear-filled eyes, I saw my children rising from their seats, breaking protocol to run toward the stage. They crashed into me with such force that we almost fell, their arms wrapping around me in a desperate embrace. "Mom," Emma sobbed into my shoulder, "we're so sorry. We should have known. We should have trusted you," Ethan added, his voice thick with emotion. Over their shoulders, I watched Diana slip out of the auditorium, her web of lies finally untangled. James joined our family hug, his eyes conveying both love and regret for ever doubting. Later that evening, as we celebrated at home, Emma brought out the letters Diana had planted. Without a word, she and Ethan tore them to pieces, letting go of the lies that had briefly poisoned our family. "How did you stay so calm?" Ethan asked as we sat together on the porch swing. "When we were so horrible to you." I smiled, pulling them both closer. "Because I knew the truth would win. Real love always does." The next day, we received a message from Diana. She was moving across the country, away from the mess she created. None of us tried to stop her. Some bridges, once burned, are better left as ashes. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Mom, can we still have pancakes for dinner like we used to? The ones with chocolate chips in the shape of smiley faces." I smiled, remembering all the Sunday nights spent making those pancakes, the kitchen filled with laughter and chocolate smudges. Another memory Diana could never fake, another thread in the tapestry of our real family story. Of course, I texted back. Some traditions are forever. And that's the thing about truth. It doesn't need elaborate stories or forged letters. It lives in the simple moments, the quiet memories, the love that cannot be invented or erased. Diana had tried to rewrite our story, but in the end she'd only made it stronger. Because real family isn't about who tells the best story, it's about who lives it with you, every single day. "These belong to me now," Amanda declared, her manicured fingers trailing over my mother's antique jewelry box. She turned to me with a smirk that made my blood boil. "After all, I'll be the new Mrs. Harrison soon." I stood in my family home's living room, watching this 26-year-old woman brazenly claim my inheritance while my husband of 15 years, James, just stood there nodding like a puppet. My name is Olivia Harrison, and at 42, I never expected to find myself in this absurd situation. "The jewelry stays with me," I said calmly, though my heart was racing. The antique collection wasn't just gold and gems. It was 3 generations of my family's history, pieces my grandmother and mother had carefully preserved and passed down. Amanda laughed, tossing her perfectly styled blonde hair. "James already promised them to me. Didn't you, darling?" She batted her eyelashes at my husband, who couldn't even meet my gaze. "Liv," James finally spoke, his voice carrying that condescending tone he'd developed since meeting his new secretary 6 months ago. "You need to be reasonable. Amanda and I are starting a new life together. These pieces should go to the woman who'll carry on the Harrison name." I felt a strange calm wash over me. Perhaps it was the months of preparation for this moment, or maybe it was knowing what waited in the attic above us. "You're right," I said, watching their expressions shift from smug to confused. "Why don't we check the attic first? There's an old box up there you both should see." James frowned. "What box?" "I've been through everything in this house." "Not everything," I thought. "Follow me," I said, already heading toward the stairs. I could hear Amanda's heels clicking behind me, no doubt expecting to find more treasures to claim. The attic was exactly as I'd left it last week, dusty and dim, except for the antique trunk I positioned prominently in the center. It was my grandmother's, a beautiful cedar piece with brass fittings that had always been kept locked. Until now. "Open it," I gestured to James. He hesitated, then knelt before the trunk, lifting a lid with a creak that seemed to echo through the space. Inside, laid out carefully on top of yellowed silk paper, was a stack of documents that made Amanda's smirk falter for the first time since she'd walked into my house. "What are these?" James asked, picking up the first envelope. "That would be the original deed to this house," I said, watching his face carefully. "The one showing it was left to me, not you, by my grandmother. The Harrison name has nothing to do with it." Amanda snatched another document from the trunk. This is from 1952. "My grandmother's marriage certificate," I confirmed, along with the prenuptial agreement that specifically stated all family heirlooms, including jewelry, would pass directly to female descendants only. My mother inherited everything legally, and so did I. James was shuffling through papers now, his hands shaking slightly. "These are all registered with the county. Why didn't I know about this?" "Because you never bothered to ask," I replied. "You were too busy building your perfect life with Amanda to notice I've been meeting with the family lawyer for months." Another document caught Amanda's eye, a recent one. "What's this about an LLC?" "Oh, that." I smiled. "That shows how I transferred ownership of all my inherited assets into a protected trust 3 months ago. Everything from this house to the jewelry you're so eager to claim is legally secured. Neither of you can touch any of it." The color drained from James's face. "You can't do this. We're still married." "Actually," I reached into the trunk and pulled out one final envelope. "We won't be for much longer. These divorce papers are already filed. You'll be served officially tomorrow." Amanda's voice rose to a shriek. "You planned this. You trapped us." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I protected what was mine, just like my grandmother and mother taught me to do." I watched as they frantically dug through the trunk, finding more evidence of my family's careful planning across 3 generations. Each document, each legal agreement had been preserved perfectly, creating an unbreakable chain of inheritance that James and his girlfriend couldn't challenge. My lawyer will fight this, James threatened, but his voice lacked conviction. Your lawyer can try, I agreed. But considering these documents have been verified by 3 different legal firms and the county registrar, I wouldn't waste the money. Money you don't have much of anymore, since I froze our joint accounts this morning. Amanda's face contorted with rage. You vindictive bye. No, I said, my voice steady. I protected what was mine, just like my grandmother and mother taught me to do. I watched as they frantically dug through the trunk, finding more evidence of my family's careful planning across 3 generations. Each document, each legal agreement had been preserved perfectly, creating an unbreakable chain of inheritance that James and his girlfriend couldn't challenge. My lawyer will fight this, James threatened, but his voice lacked conviction. Your lawyer can try, I agreed. But considering these documents have been verified by 3 different legal firms and the county registrar, I wouldn't waste the money. Money you don't have much of anymore, since I froze our joint accounts this morning. Amanda's face contorted with rage. You vindictive bye. I choose your next words carefully, I cut her off. Unless you want the HR department at Harrison and Associates to receive the evidence of your relationship with James while you were still his secretary. That non-fraternization policy is quite strict, isn't it? The attic fell silent except for the sound of Amanda's heavy breathing. James looked like he aged 10 years in the past 10 minutes, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. Now, I said, closing the trunk with a decisive click, I think it's time for both of you to leave. My house, my rules. As they stumbled down the attic stairs, I heard Amanda hiss at James, You said this would be easy. You said she was just a trophy wife who wouldn't fight back. I smiled, thinking of my grandmother's words written in her diary, which I found in this very trunk months ago. A woman's strength isn't in making noise, but in being prepared when others try to silence her. Looking around the attic, I felt a deep connection to the women who'd come before me. They'd known someday another woman in our family might need protection, might need to fight for what was rightfully hers. They prepared everything, preserved every document, created every legal safeguard possible. The jewelry box downstairs wasn't just a collection of precious stones and metals. It was a symbol of their foresight, their strength, and now, my victory. James and Amanda could plot and scheme all they wanted, but they'd never understand the power of a legacy protected by generations of careful planning. I heard the front door slam, followed by the sound of James's car starting up. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time to show them exactly what else that antique box in the attic held. Secrets that would make today's revelations look like child's play. The next morning, I sat in my study surrounded by the contents of another hidden compartment I discovered in the antique trunk. My grandmother had been more clever than anyone realized. There was a false bottom containing documents that even I hadn't known about until last night. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from James and his family. His mother, Eleanor, was particularly vocal. How dare you embarrass our family like this? James told me everything about your vindictive behavior. We'll see you in court. I smiled, spreading out the yellowed papers before me. If Eleanor only knew what I discovered about her own family's past, she might think twice about threats. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Marcus, my family's longtime accountant, who'd worked with both my mother and grandmother. I came as soon as I got your message, he said, settling into the chair across from me. Are these the documents you mentioned? I handed him the first set of papers. His eyes widened as he read. This changes everything, he muttered, reaching for his reading glasses. Does James know about this? Not yet, I replied, but he will soon. The papers revealed that the Harrison family fortune, the very wealth that James and his mother had lorded over me for years, had actually been built using funds from my grandmother's family, a secret loan made in 1960 that had never been repaid, complete with compound interest calculations that would make any modern accountant sweat. According to these records, Marcus said, your grandmother's family essentially saved the Harrison business from bankruptcy. They never transferred ownership of the original investment, just allowed the Harrisons to manage it. And now, with accumulated interest and the original terms of the agreement, your family technically owns controlling interest in Harrison and Associates. James' grandfather never legally transferred the shares back. I leaned back in my chair, letting the implications sink in. No wonder my grandmother had kept these documents hidden. She'd been protecting both families from a truth that could destroy everything. Just then, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Amanda. James is devastated. His father's threatening to cut him off because of your lies. You've ruined everything. Poor Amanda, still thinking this was about her. She had no idea she was just a pawn in a much larger game. I turned back to Marcus. How long will it take to verify these documents? I've already started the process, he replied. But Olivia, are you sure you want to do this? This could destroy the Harrison family completely. I thought about James standing in our living room, watching silently as his girlfriend tried to claim my family's treasures. I thought about Eleanor's years of subtle digs about my modest background, never knowing her own family's success was built on my grandmother's generosity. They need to understand what they're about to lose, I said firmly. Set up the meeting. The next day, I walked into the Harrison and Associates boardroom, where James, Eleanor, and Amanda sat with their lawyer. Their expressions ranged from contemptuous to concerned. This is a waste of time, Eleanor announced. Whatever games you're playing, Olivia. I placed the documents on the table, sliding them toward their lawyer. These might interest you. The room fell silent as their lawyer read, his face growing increasingly pale. Eleanor snatched the papers from him, her hands trembling as she scanned the contents. This is impossible, she whispered. Father would have told us. Would he? I asked quietly. Would he have admitted that his success was built on someone else's money? That he never truly owned what he claimed was his? James was reading over his mother's shoulder, his face ashen. These signatures are real. Of course they are, I said. My grandmother kept perfect records. She never intended to use them. She wanted both families to succeed. But you and Amanda forced my hand when you tried to take what wasn't yours. Amanda, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. I don't understand. What does this mean? It means, their lawyer interjected, that Mrs. Harrison's family has legal claim to approximately 60% of Harrison and Associates. The original investment was never properly settled. Eleanor's face had turned an interesting shade of red. You planned this. You've been planning this for years. I shook my head. No, Eleanor. I discovered these documents yesterday in the same trunk that protected my inheritance from your son's schemes. My grandmother left us both gifts, me, the truth, and your family, decades of freedom to pretend this company was solely yours. James stood up abruptly. What do you want? Money? The house? Name your price. I want you to understand what it feels like to have someone try to take what's yours. I replied calmly, to feel powerless while others decide your fate. How does it feel, James? The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor was quietly crying. James looked like he might be sick, and Amanda was slowly inching her chair away from them both, her dreams of becoming the next Mrs. Harrison visibly crumbling. You have 24 hours to decide, I said, standing up. Either we negotiate terms that protect both families' interests, or I'll proceed with a full legal claim. Your choice. As I walked out of the boardroom, I heard Amanda's voice. James, maybe we should take a break. I smiled. Phase 2 was complete. The antique box in my attic hadn't just protected my inheritance. It had revealed a truth that would force the Harrisons to face their own lies. And there was still one more secret to reveal. The final document from my grandmother's trunk sat unopened on my desk. The envelope was marked to be opened only when all else fails. After yesterday's boardroom revelation, I knew it was time. My hands trembled slightly as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter and a single photograph that made my heart stop. It showed my grandmother standing beside James' grandfather, William Harrison, both young and smiling. They were holding hands. The letter began, My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, the Harrison family has forced your hand. There's one final truth they need to face. A knock at my door interrupted my reading. It was Eleanor, looking decades older than she had yesterday. May I come in? She asked, her usual imperious tone replaced by something almost humble. I gestured to the chair across from me. She sat, her eyes fixed on the photograph in my hands. Where did you get that? She whispered. It was in my grandmother's trunk, along with this letter. I held up the pages. Would you like to know what it says? Eleanor's hands clutched her designer handbag so tightly her knuckles turned white. He was more than just a business partner, wasn't he? According to this letter, your father-in-law and my grandmother were in love. She loaned him the money to save his failing business, but his family forced him to marry someone else. Your mother-in-law. Tears rolled down Eleanor's cheeks. That explains so much. Why he was always so kind to your family, why he insisted on maintaining connections even when it made no business sense. I continued reading from the letter. William and I made a pact. The money would remain unofficially invested, and both families would be protected. But if his descendants ever tried to harm mine, the truth would come out. James needs to know, Eleanor said quietly. This might be the only thing that will make him understand. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from James. We need to talk. Alone. I agreed to meet him at our old spot, the garden pavilion where he proposed 15 years ago. When I arrived, he was already there, looking lost and defeated. Amanda left, he said without preamble. Said she couldn't handle the drama, couldn't handle being part of a family built on lies. Ironic, I replied, considering she was helping you live one. He winced. I deserve that. I deserve all of this. But what I don't understand is why my grandfather would leave us vulnerable like this. I handed him the photograph and letter. His hands shook as he read, his face growing increasingly pale. They were in love, he whispered. All this time, our families were connected by more than just business. Your grandfather wanted both families to prosper together, I explained. He never intended for these documents to be used as weapons. That choice was forced by you and Amanda. James sat heavily on the pavilion bench. I've ruined everything, haven't I? Not just our marriage, but my family's legacy too. Not yet, I said. There's still a chance to fix this. Not our marriage, that's over, but the legacy both our grandparents tried to protect. How? We restructure the company, equal partnership between both families, just as they originally intended. We honor their vision instead of fighting over control. James looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. You do that. After everything? I'm not doing it for you, I said firmly. I'm doing it for my grandmother, for your grandfather, and for the legacy they wanted us to preserve. Over the next few weeks, the restructuring was finalized. The Harrison family learned to share control. Amanda disappeared to chase some other wealthy prospect, and Eleanor became an unexpected ally, helping to implement changes that made the company stronger than ever. The antique box in my attic had held more than just legal documents. It had contained a love story, a business empire's true origins, and the key to healing decades of hidden wounds. My grandmother had known someday these truths would need to come out, and she prepared everything perfectly. One evening, as I sat in my study reviewing the final partnership agreements, Eleanor knocked on my door again. I found this in William's old desk, she said, holding out another photograph. It showed my grandmother and William Harrison in their later years, still standing close, still sharing a secret smile. They never stopped loving each other, Eleanor said softly, but they chose to protect their families instead of choosing themselves. We owe it to them to do better. I nodded, understanding finally why my grandmother had protected these secrets for so long. Sometimes the truth isn't meant to destroy. It's meant to rebuild, to restore what was lost, to remind us of the love and sacrifice that built our foundations. The jewelry box still sits in my living room, untouched by Amanda's greedy hands. But now it represents more than just my inheritance. It's a symbol of two families brought back together by the very secrets that could have torn them apart forever. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying your enemies, but in forcing them to face the truth they've been running from all along.